Afternoon adventurers, and welcome to another episode of Spells Illustrated, where I demonstrate how spells can be useful in some situations. On today's episode, we've got Elemental Bane, an often overlooked spell, which is a little tricky to use effectively. It's a 4th level spell, so not a lot of people seem to be willing to commit to using it, understandably. But hopefully, in this video I can explain at least one situation where it could be useful if your team plays into it. And that's really the crux of things with this spell. Your team has to work with you on it, dealing the same type of damage that you've specified with the spell when you cast it. Otherwise, you're only going to get a couple of d6s out of it over the course of a fight. But you can get a whole lot of d6s out of it if your team works with you. So let's get started. Our scenario today involves a town that has a raging Tyrannosaurus Rex running through it for some reason. Who knows why? It doesn't matter. Our adventurers have got to put a stop to this. So, we've got our Sorcerer, Croesus, from earlier videos. Now, obviously these are going to be leveled up versions because it's a 4th level spell. So these characters have got to be at least 7th level. He casts Elemental Bane, and let's say he's going for Fire, because that's a pretty easy damage type to get on a lot of classes. And also T-Rexes aren't resistant or immune to that, so you might as well. Croesus casts that, maybe backs up, gets out of the way, because no one wants to be near a raging T-Rex, except for maybe a raging Barbarian. The Barbarian probably doesn't have a lot of fire stuff they can do, unless they are a Storm Herald Barbarian, which I don't necessarily recommend anyone do. So, he probably isn't going to help out that much. This Warlock, from another earlier video, William, this isn't Baldur's Gate, is going to cast a spell like maybe Create Bonfire, or maybe move up and cast Green Flame Blade if he's feeling particularly frisky. Or perhaps he's a Fiend Pact Warlock and he has things like Scorching Ray or even Fireball. He can cast those and deal an extra 2d6 fire damage. I should back up a step because I forgot something. Croesus is a sorcerer, which means he can cast Elemental Bane as a quickened spell, and then throw out something like a Firebolt and deal an extra 2d6 damage right off the bat. Either way, Will's going to stay near the front because he's got a trick up his sleeve that we're going to get to in a second. Our Paladin here, who isn't named yet, let's call her, Greta. I just made something up. Is going to move forward and cast Searing Smite, dealing extra fire damage with her attack, and also 2d6 extra fire damage because of Elemental Bane. She can also toss her own Divine Smite on top of that if she wants, and use extra attack, possibly with another Divine Smite, to dish out even more damage, but that's not pertinent to the spell we're talking about. Our Cleric might have some fire options, probably does actually. So we can easily assume that they cast one of those. I also haven't named the Cleric. Tell me in the comments what you want to name the Cleric. And now that is everyone's turn. The T-Rex is up. I don't know why I just decided the T-Rex is going last. I kind of just wanted to go over what everyone does. It's just an example anyway. The T-Rex is probably going to attack the Paladin because it did a bunch of damage. The Barbarian because it did a bunch of damage. The Barbarian should technically be up here because its base is where the actual creature's at, even though the mini is huge. And let's say, for the sake of example, that the T-Rex also whips Will with its tail. Now William has Hellish Rebuke as a Warlock. He took that as one of his spells, so he can use his reaction to deal fire damage to the T-Rex. T-Rex makes a saving throw, maybe it passes, maybe it fails. Either way, it's taking 2d6 extra fire damage. See where I'm going with this? You can hit it a lot. This works because it's happening on the T-Rex's turn. The 2d6 only happens once per turn, and this is on the T-Rex's turn. Next round, things probably go largely the same, although maybe the Barbarian realizes that he has in his pocket an Alchemist Fire, or anyone, but the Barbarian doesn't have his own fire damage necessarily, unless he's got like a Flame Tongue or something. That's a different story. But somebody throws, maybe a commoner peeks out a window, who knows, and throws Alchemist Fire at this T-Rex, hits it, and lights it on fire. Now at the start of each of its turns, that T-Rex is taking 1d4 fire damage, and guess what? That's fire damage, so it deals an extra 2d6. Maybe somebody throws a flask of oil on this T-Rex, and now whenever it takes fire damage in the next minute, it takes an additional 5 fire damage. In fact, if we go back to the start, Croesus here could cast Elemental Bane on the T-Rex as a quicken spell, and then throw a flask of oil on him, or the other way around. And now, once per turn, when it takes fire damage, it's taking an extra 2d6 plus 5 fire damage. Also, the oil damage isn't limited to once per turn, so keep that in mind as well. With all of these players working in tandem, we're looking at an extra 10d6 with 5 party members. Fire damage every round, which is equivalent to a 5th level fireball. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that Elemental Bane is as good as a 5th level fireball. There are many situations in which a fireball is going to outclass this easily and quickly. But if you have a single very strong target that you need to burn down, no pun intended, through the HP very quickly before it wreaks havoc on a town or destroys your party members and things like that, Elemental Bane can help with that. The spell also benefits from having a bigger party. If you have only 3 or 4 people, it's not actually going to be as good as having 6 or 7 people, or more if your DM is up for that kind of thing. Being able to apply more fire damage individually means that there are more d6s being thrown around each round of combat, and the creature will probably take a lot more damage before it eventually dies. So it's going to be up to you and your party and the damage types that you deal. Keep in mind that the spell doesn't have to be just fire either, so if you have a lot of people in your party that deal lightning damage, for example, you can use that. But if your party has a lot of varied damage types, as adventuring parties usually do, the spell is probably not going to be your first choice. You know, a lot of times the Warlock is going to be dealing force damage, and the Cleric's going to be doing Radiant or something. Barbarian has Slashing, Bludgeoning, or Piercing. So does the Paladin, but also Radiant. You can't choose those damage types. But hey, if you're in a party full of sorcerers and wizards and stuff, go for it. Anyway, that's about all I have for this spell. It is very situational, but could add a lot of damage, potentially, to a one versus the party type of fight, or even a boss fight with minions, but just obviously the spell doesn't affect those. Before I end the video, I also do want to mention that if you upcast the spell, you can target multiple creatures with it. You can also cast it as a twin spell if you want, to target more than one creature. Although, again, it's going to depend on what kind of damage your party is throwing out, whether that's going to be worth it. If you have multiple creatures within the radius of a fireball, and you have a lot of people in your party that can cast fireball and are willing to, you could burn them down that much faster. Or you could just cast a 4th level fireball and call it a day. That's the thing. The biggest problem, the number one thing that I see holding the spell back, is that there are plenty of ways to just deal roughly the same amount of damage as I'm talking about in around, 8d6, 10d6, with other spells. A fireball already deals 8d6 to a bunch of creatures, and Elemental Bane takes time. The only time I could see Elemental Bane being more useful than just a straight up damage spell is gonna be if you have something with an insane amount of HP. Something like a Great Worm Dragon that has, 900 or something, and then a mythic action to get half of its health back, or get 400 of its health back, or something like that. I don't remember the exact stats. The point is, if you're going to be fighting something with 1300-ish HP, you're gonna have plenty of rounds of combat, so a long-lasting spell like Elemental Bane could be the move, but it has so many restrictions and caveats that you're probably better off with something else. That's the unfortunate bit. Anyway, I hope during this video I have demonstrated a way that it can be useful, a situation that it can be good in. That's all I have for today. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more of these and more of my shorts content, etc. Both of those things will help my channel out quite a bit, and I appreciate it. So that's going to be it for this one, and I hope to see you in the next. Happy adventuring!